Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go over a little bit of a summary of what exactly do we happen, how do we combine complex numbers. Now, basically when we're combining complex numbers, we're basically talking about, combining or adding and subtracting complex numbers. And remember, complex numbers have our imaginary portion as well as their real portion. So when we're combining complex numbers, a lot of it is just combining the real parts and then combining the imaginary parts. And remember, the imaginary parts are just like combining, adding, and subtracting, expressions or polynomials. So we're going to be using really the same techniques, and it's really just about combining each of these separately. However, there are a couple mistakes that students make, so I do want to go over just some common tips and tricks as well as some common mistakes that I see as a teacher with my other students. Now, first of all, when using tips and tricks, as I mentioned, your imaginary portions, when we're combining, adding, and subtracting complex numbers, we want to make sure we can combine only the imaginary portions with the imaginary parts because they're like terms. So a lot of times those students have trouble with that because we're not really used to using I. So one of my recommendations is just go back to X and Y. If you want to use X and Y to help you remember how to combine, like terms, add and subtract, then do that, right? Because the X or the I is going to remain the same. You're just adding or subtracting the coefficients. The next thing is rearranging them. A lot of times we're going to be adding and subtracting the real parts and the imaginary parts of the complex numbers. They're not going to be next to each other. So rearrange the problem. Just make sure you keep the sign the same, but rearrange the problem so that you have your real parts that you can add, subtract, and then you have your imaginary parts, which you can add and subtract. The next thing is some common mistakes. Basically, when we're looking at common mistakes, I still see students that are combining unlike terms, saying like 5 plus 3i, that equals 8i, or equals 8. These are not like terms. You cannot combine your unlike terms. The main important thing about combining complex numbers is you combine your reals and you combine your imaginaries. And that's it. You keep those terms separated. You do not combine real with imaginary numbers. The next thing is subtracting. I think subtracting gets a lot of students, and especially when they have these negative, let's do plus 2i. Okay, remember when subtracting, you could say it out loud, 3 minus a negative 4, and then 3, or positive 3, minus 2i. Right? But a lot of times it gets the little students confused. So what we recommend, a lot of times in the problems I do, is applying to the distributive property. So therefore, you have 3 minus a negative, which would be plus 4, and then minus negative 2i, so it would be minus 2i. And again, make sure when you're applying, it doesn't matter addition or subtraction, but you combine your terms, right? 3 minus a negative 4 is the same thing as adding 4. And then, what am I doing? 3 minus there. 3 minus 4, yeah, I'm sorry. You can't, and then minus 2i. You can't distribute. I always make a mistake that students make. You do not distribute when you're minusing. You're only distributing the negative sign. You're not distributing the 3. I don't think I've ever made that mistake before, but be careful. Yes, it's only minus the negative, or 3 minus 4, and then minus 2i. So you got to make sure you distribute that negative sign, so it's going to be something like that. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is just a quick little summary of adding and subtracting or combining complex numbers. Thanks.